Welcome to the Dance Centre podcast. I am your host, Claire French, and I'm joining you from the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, also known as Vancouver, Canada. I'll be talking to dancers, choreographers and other members of the dance world here on the West Coast to find out more about their creative work and practices and to discuss what it means to us to be dance professionals today. Thanks for joining us. Justine A. Chambers is a dance artist and educator living and working on the unceded Coast Salish territory of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations in Vancouver, Canada. Her practice is a collaboration with her Black matrilineal heritage and extends from this continuum and its entanglements with Western contemporary dance and visual arts practices. At the centre of her practice is a question often posed by her grandmother, "You feel me?" This question is both a declaration of one's personal orientation and an invitation to reorient and include what is held in our flesh. Her research tends to individual and collective embodied archives, social choreographies of the everyday, and choreography and dance as otherwise ways of being in relation. Chambers holds an MFA in Interdisciplinary Arts and is currently assistant professor in the dance area at the School for Contemporary Arts at Simon Fraser University and associate artist to the Dance Centre. Her recent choreographic projects include The Brutal Joy, Zephyrs, Heirloom, Archives and Heirlooms, Steady, and then This Also, 100 More, Tail Feather for All of Us. It Could Have Been Like This, 10,000 Times, and 100 More. Family Dinner, Families in the Lexicon, Semi-Precious, The Faceting of a Gemstone, Only Appears Complete and Critical, Enters and Exits, and Copy. Please check out her website at justineachambers.com to find out more about her really extensive and wonderful work. We'll get the chance now to talk about some of those projects and her associate artist with the Dance Centre. Welcome, Justine. Here we go, Justine Chambers, Justine A. Chambers. It's been a long time. I haven't seen you in the flesh for a very long time, but I am delighted that you're joining me here again.
Oh, yeah.
And for the listeners, what is it? It's our third podcast together, isn't it?
Yes.
And we're also celebrating because it's the 50th episode as well. So couldn't have a better guest for such an occasion. Excellent. So we have a lot of catching up to do.
We do.
We need to bring our listeners up to date and get into the projects that you're working on now and a whole bunch of things, obviously. But as an associate artist of the Dance Centre, there's a lot to talk about there. There's a really kind of juicy kind of relationship you have with them over several years. I believe it's a 3-year term.
Yes. We're just going, and that's lovely. That is.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. There are so many facets to it. So I'd love to talk about all of those with you as well.
Sure.
But I wonder if first we could kind of just locate it in your piece, The Brutal Joy, and just start with that because I believe did you just premiere it?
We premiered it in March at IGOHA, and we just did it at with the NAC at ODD.
Yeah, absolutely.
3 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
And how did that go?
It was great. It was great.
Excellent.
Yeah, we had a great time. I mean, it's the kind of work that never stays static and keeps sort of defining itself. So I think a week before we went, James was on tour with Vanessa Goodman, and Mao and I had a rehearsal or two, and I was like, Mao, I want to kind of change a lot of things. And I mean, this is no surprise to anyone who works with me that I never let a work. I just feel like things are always sort of just unfinished is the state of affairs, right? So if you get to return to the work, you get to think with it and through it again. So there were some pretty, for us internally anyways, large shifts. And then when it was over, we knew how we wanted to shift it again before we do it in February. And it was great because, I lived in Ottawa for junior high and high school. And my dad's there, and my very, very best friend in the whole world is there. Also, to do it at ODD, which used to be Le Groupe de la Place Royale, which is where I trained, to walk in that building. Like the first day I walked in the building, I like walked in the building, went straight to Studio B. Like my body just went there. But that's not where I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be in the theater. So, I don't know, there's something pretty special, and also being hosted by the NAC, but also the women at ODD and Yvonne Coots in particular, who was like dance icon for me growing up and still. I mean, I just think she's, yeah, one of those extremely special humans. And yeah, just to sort of be held in that space, the archive of that, of my dancing in that space in particular. Yeah, it was really, it was cold, it was dry. I've turned into like a rainforest tree frog, right? So I'm just like, oh, it's
Yes.
dry, so cold. But it was really great. And I mean, to be with Mao and James, just busy in the work of working is always, yeah, life-giving, life-giving. Yeah.
Can we talk about maybe not necessarily the origins of the piece, but the kind of maybe the meaning behind it? It's so rich, so these are these are the ways I've broken it down. These are the things that I think, like the meaning, the talk that goes, I believe, alongside the piece, the
Mm-hmm.
motivation, the process, and the outcome.
Okay. Not a rock burned.
I know, but I feel like each of those offers insight into why the piece exists, why like what this, and I feel, having known you for a while, known you in a certain capacity for a while, that this feels like a milestone. It feels like a coming together of lots of different
Yeah,
things and lots of different interests, but also a kind of departure. And so I want to give it space and use space to talk about
love
those
it.
things.
Okay, meaning. I mean, I think internally for myself, I feel like this work, I was making it as I knew that I was going to lose my grandmother,
Mm,
my mom's mom. She was getting really, really old and needing more care and a little confused sometimes. And she was sort of like this very sharp person in my mind. Like she has a sharp image in my mind. She was very sharp. You can't put anything past her. And then all of a sudden she was becoming fuzzy, or I could see how she was increasingly becoming fuzzy. I mean, this work actually started with a work I made with her. I've been calling it the Heirloom Suite, even though I kind of dislike that name, but I'm not a titles gal. It's not my forte. So I just accept that I don't come up with good titles. Although The Brutal Joy, I think, is a great title, but I didn't come up with that. So I'll
okay.
just say that clearly. And I was thinking about, well, the first piece is called Tail Feather, which was an invitation from Jesse Birch at the Nanaimo Art Gallery to do, he was making works that were intergenerational, inviting artists to do intergenerational work, and invited me to be part of this exhibition. And I thought, I want to make something with my grandmother. And that was in 2018. So that was like before she felt fuzzy or that she was going out of focus. And that was really about me trying to create an archive of her dancing. She used to dance at this ballroom on the south side of Chicago like every Friday night. And it's called the Bronzeville Ballroom, and it's kind of like an auspicious site, right? Obama did a speech there.
Mm,
It's like any jazz great you can imagine
mm,
played there, and it's specifically on the south side of Chicago, which is an all-black area historically, and pretty much still. I was there just a couple of years ago, and still. And she's told me this story many, many times about how she would go there on Friday nights and dance, and I never knew if it was like one story or many conflated stories. But I could like imagine her and her friend Marie, her best friend, like totally turned out and looking fine and being beautiful, and also walking into the room and sort of like checking everybody out. So the point was for me to sort of preserve the dancing she did through conversation, and it was an arduous process, I'm not gonna lie. She was wholly uninterested in my art project. I just wanted to chat, talk about who's getting on her nerves, on her last nerve, and but I kind of eventually kind of squeaked out some things. So out of that sort of language, I created a line dance, like a soul line dance, like an invented line dance that I would teach as sort of a social practice thing. So I taught it to little kids and I taught it to adults, and I did this at the ballroom. But part of her stipulation for participating was that she got to make the playlist. So she went through, I asked her to send me a list of all of her favorite songs. I think she sent me a list of like 50 songs. So that kind of became the backbone for it. And that was sort of the presence in the gallery that you could go and sit down and listen to her playlist. So that was the first iteration. And then I was thinking about, oh yeah, line dance. Like, why did I choose to make a line dance? Like, that's, outside of my practice, but very much inside of my humanity and my sort of lived experience.
Yeah.
And so I kept sort of like revisiting this idea of the line dance and archives and counter archives and embodied archives, and just thinking about how, like, what makes it into the archive and what doesn't make it into the archive. I'm really committed to subjectivity, regardless of its truthiness or not. And I thought, what would it be to center what's held in our bodies instead of what's held in a record or an official record? And then, of course, this starts to attach to like what histories aren't included and what's underrepresented, not as oops, we didn't include them, but as like a matter of, well, just quite directly not included because it undoes other narratives that allow the world to function in a particular way.
Mm-hmm. Truthiness.
I think
Truthiness. There's an element of truthiness in it. Yeah.
Yeah, like if Black folks could be as resplendent as they are, a lot of the narratives, current narratives in the narratives for the last 400 years, couldn't exist, right? We couldn't live in the world. The world we live in now wouldn't be formed the way it is if we could have included Black narratives that include all the beauty, right? All the beauty and all the resilience and of course all the resilience and all the beauty formed out of pressure and pain and horrors. I was like, what is it to settle on the beauty, beautiful acts and beautiful things, and an insistence upon our humanity as a beautiful thing. So of course, I dance, and this is what I do. And so I worked on another work called Heirloom and Archives with Seika Boy for her Dancing Black in Canada exhibition as a response to the exhibition, where I sort of talked through my dance history and moved a bit. And then at the end, I was like, I did the electric slide because that's something I did in bowling alley basements with my cousins and my friends, or at family parties or weddings, whatever. And I thought, oh, this is the first piece of choreography I ever learned. If I really think about like, what's the first piece of choreography, it would be this dance. And when did I learn it? I have no idea. It's just there in my body. So then that sort of became a curiosity for me, like, why are there so many soul line dances, and where do they come from, and how did they get here, and how do we, like, this sort of innovation that happens within these ambulatory structures, which are like deeply inclusive, right? You can do them at any age, like my mother dear, who was what we used to call my great grandmother. As she aged, these steps became very tiny, and all these like, little articulations in her shoulders and her gaze and her chin as a very full dance. But then I can think about my cousin Brian, who would like do a handstand on the step touch, would like go onto his hands. So I was like, oh, this dance is so capacious that actually anything can happen inside of any moment of the dance if you choose to individuate in that way. And then alternatively, the dance requires that everybody pays attention to holding it down collectively, right? So, I mean, I guess that's how I'd like the world to be. Like, go ahead, please individuate, but know that you're part of something larger and you're responsible to that also.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that is like very much a structure of Black culture. So speaking to that, but really just like what happens when we hang out in the dance and what can show up. So there was another iteration just called Heirloom that I did at the gallery at Concordia, where I just did the electric slide for an hour. And I tried to recall my entire history as a dancer, not my history as a choreographer, but just every dance I did. So with each footfall, I would try, well, I did, and some moments very successful and other moments not so much, but I just tried to recall every dance I can ever remember doing, but held it in the structure of the electric slide. So the form would shift, but the structure of the dance would not. And then came the brutal joy, where I was like, okay, what is this dance doing? And what is this lecture? What is the scholarship inside this dance? And then, of course, throughout all of this, as you know, in terms of meaning, going back to beauty, I love fashion. Everybody knows that who knows me. That is my one and only hobby. I have nothing left else in my life except for like my family.
Yes.
And dance and fashion.
Family, dance, and fashion.
So I I was thinking again also about how fashion works in a similar way, and they're both in some ways freedom technologies, right? The ability, when we think about that the ability to choose one's own dress was like one of the largest acts of freedom post-emancipation, that all of a sudden you got to choose what was on your body and how it was on your body. And with that sort of comes the emergence of the Black dandy in America. And I'm really speaking about Black Americans because that is what the seat that I sit in and speak from. Of course, dandyism started in England, 16th, 17th century. And Black dandyism too, but also through a relationship of being enslaved, whereas it sort of emerged in America once you were emancipated. So you would be dressed up all dandy-like as a Black slave, but you would still be a Black slave, right?
Yeah.
So looking at that, but just, I think for me, the Black dandy indicates like this sort of like deeply courageous audacity to show up. And to show up fine, but also to show up fine where there's always a turn on the conventional version of the suit, right? There's always a turn on it. And we see this, of course, last year's Met Gala and the super fine exhibition at the Met. I guess my timing was good or bad, depending on how you look at it.
Well, I think there's something, because what is fashion, right? And what is dance are the things that come up there as well, and the relationship to it is there's the individual side of it, and there's so much conformism or conservatism or conventionalism in those, that there's a point at which when people stand out for their choices or something, it kind of seems like that's what the whole point of the things are. It reminds us that there's a layer of conformism still happening.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? That they're not necessarily immediately just creative, expressive outlets. There's something else that we have to do with them now in order for that to be part of what that expression is.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Just wearing a suit is a choice you make because it's available to you, not necessarily because it expresses something about you, or you're not necessarily choosing it for that reason. So I what you're saying, I think, is on the kind of elevated end of culture and ways in which we engage with those two things, if you like, and how we choose to use those things. They become a function of expression or a function of individualism, which I think is really lovely.
And I think also in this case within like Black American culture, I'm going to say that it functions as a way to self-actualize, because you're not handed those opportunities externally, right? So these are always built within community and from within your own body. I've been obsessed with this show on Netflix, Starting Five, about the basketball players. And man, first of all, basketball's like dancing, and their rigor, but also the fashion, right? And this sort of, especially the Canadian, what's his name, Shea, SDG, man, sweet G child. I'm dead. But I'm thinking about like that from within dancing and from within fashion, or from within style. Like it's not even fashion, because it's not even about like what's trendy or what's in on the runways. It's like how you turn out, and how you choose to turn out. And that doesn't have to sort of be on trend, right? It's trend, I have feelings about trend, but I won't express. So, and then of course, when I was doing all the research, I started to see that these both fashion and dance sort of have been sort of unfurling over the last 400 years as like parallel, intertwining, codependent forms, like for us to find ourselves, for us to find community, and for us to also clap back, right? When I think about, how like when we were wearing boxers and low jeans in the 90s, everyone said we're ghetto, but then it's on Balenciaga's runway now. So I'm just, these types of things, right? So the innovation that was 30 years prior is now on the runway. I even think about Dapper Dan being in these houses, someone like Dapper Dan, who was not a revered fashion icon, but of course now is, right? Like, I'm just like, you're just sort of seeing that innovation and those turns on fashion that ask it to be something else. And I think it's because we're practiced at asking it to be something else for us, right? And I'm speaking beyond acceptability politics. We wear the suit to be acceptable, but how we wear it is a whole other thing, right?
Absolutely.
And that's a conversation that's in a 400-year conversation with colonialism, that's in a 400-year conversation with like sort of being American culture, in fact, and all of these things. But for me, it's just like I grew up in a fashionable family, both sides, my black and my white side of my family,
Yeah.
very fashionable people, and this sort of care for and attention to how you present yourself. And I think of it also, I think of fashion as a way to invite people in, but also a way to keep people out, right? I think there's something, not so much that it's a mask, but it is a barrier should you choose to use it that way. And also it brings attention, right? So yeah. And then for me, it's just about like preserving the lessons, right? Like preserving the lessons from my matriarch, from the matriarch on my mother's side of the family, the matriarchs, I think it's about preserving the lessons and like holding it in my body and like refusing its erasure, refusing its dissipation. And, I even look at my kid who's like a full sweatpant dandy, right? Like in cap and the big huge North Face oversized puffy vest, and then like the coral sweatshirt and the pink sweatpants and the big New Balances. Like I'm looking at this kid, I'm like, okay, you too, I see.
Yeah,
And not because I forced it, but I encourage these things. I'm not
of
gonna
course.
lie.
So is this style element also part of the process and part of the work? Like I feel like your work is stylish. Like you're making very intentional decisions about that in your attire and in the kind of the way that everything is built together. I mean, it's very important to you, isn't it?
It's very, very, very important. And I think in the Brutal Joy in particular, I felt that okay, I want to wear a suit. I want a suit, but it can't just be any suit. And it has to have a suit that sits in the room with history. And when I say that, I'm really referring to Dion Brand here, the map to the door of no return, where she says we're always sitting in the room with history as Black folks. And so I thought, well, what material is going to sit us in the room with history? And so I went to my friend Cassandra Bailey, who is the designer for Old Fashioned Standard. She is a local Vancouver designer and like just a badass in every particular way you could think of when it comes to garments and construction and thoughtfulness. And she had a pair of waxed cotton pants a few years ago in her collection, and I was like, I want that waxed cotton. I mean, this is a conversation with the Dutch and West Africa and all sorts of things, which I won't get into because there's not time. There's the Viscor group, which was like dark, dark. But I think about cotton, I think about waxed cotton. But for me, it was like I wanted to have a textile that would hold the dance and could be sort of yet another counter archive that holds the dance. So because it's waxed, it patinas where it folds over time. Every time it's folded in my suitcase, every time I go and do this dance and I squat, like the entire dance is held in the suit. So I don't iron out my suit. I spray it with vodka and hope it doesn't reek to high hell. But it's kind of important that I don't wash it and I don't like wash out the dance. So there was one working with a designer that I love whose clothes I buy anyway, and then two building this suit that was both workwear and fancy. And then there's like a couple of flash dance references in there from my own dance history
I
of
mean,
how
come on. I mean, there has to be. I mean, come on. And this is
exactly
like
the boxers are there. Yeah, this kind of thing.
I love this because this gets me into bringing back to the movement, to the everyday movement that you talk about and is very much a part of your aesthetic, only to bring that into the conversation just a little bit more. In that I feel like, so I have a thing about this. Everyday movement done by just Justine A. Chambers is still going to be virtuosic. Do you know what I mean? Like there's still an element of that at play. And I think there's parallels with the conversation we're having around fashion, around material. And I think why I want to talk a little bit more about this, or at least say this, is that you've already mentioned thoughtfulness and care and responsibility. And I think that is also in the movement language and in your relationship to everyday movement. If you'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in this work, I feel dancier than I've been in a while, to be honest, because I think I do still work with that conjuring of all the dances. But of course, I'm also working with conjuring the everyday and sliding between different sort of states of being or gestures that I know, gestures I watched my mother do, gestures I watched my grandmother do. I think there is this sort of constant sliding between many, many things. So maybe that's where that, thank you for the
Maybe.
virtuosity, but maybe that is where that lies, is being able to slide quickly between different sort of states or ways of being. I think also what's a little bit different for me in this work is that I also things show, I mean, it's an improvised work, but also very structured. I allow things that like I envisioned in my imagination as a child, as a teenager, as a younger woman, as a older woman, middle-aged woman, perimenopausal woman. Yeah, I sort of included my imagination as truth, as things I do embody, whether or not I ever get to. I think there's
Yeah.
a part of me in my imagination in my nonstop daydreaming.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, I think it's important when I'm thinking about how to organize my body around everyday movement or pedestrian movement or whatever it is. I think I'm quite specific about how I do it. But also, I think our everyday and our pedestrian movement is also wild sometimes, like it's not like we don't do small things with our bodies on the daily. Like we use this example all the time, but like I think about when I was like 26, I was living in Toronto and there was this like massive snowstorm, and so like there's huge snowbanks everywhere, and I watched the entire city jete all day over like huge leaps over these. So that's quite extreme. Or if like a soccer game or a baseball game, somebody wins, then the whole city's arms like fly up in the air, and
Yeah.
like that's extreme. So I think I'm always trying to think of like what's the very tiny nuanced thing, which is just like if it's just a tiny shift of the thoracic spine, or what is a huge thing that is also every day, right? So
Hmm.
to not sort of think that we're only doing some quiet gestures in our everyday, because we absolutely do not. Yeah, I mean, we do both.
I see parallels with the story you told of your dear mother making everything small, but imagining, but still being really big. And then you mentioned scores, and I
Mm,
know, or a score, and I know that this is something you have you're cultivating all the time. I
mm,
know other works of yours, the work you made with Simran. I was happy that I
mhm.
could see that before I came over to the UK. I believe there was a score there. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your scores, your relationship to scores, how it's evolving, and maybe we could bring in a little bit of a conversation. I know we haven't talked about all the brutal joy elements, but I wonder if maybe we could feed them in and out. Yeah, we do that thing. We do iterations on things
Uh,
because the scores are really interesting to me, and then the dance dialogues. I'm wondering if there's any is there a crossover between scores and dance dialogues or not for you? The reason why I'm asking partly is because I feel even though I wasn't able to experience your dance dialogue I think you just did it in
that I
October,
just did with Ryan.
that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this,
That
so
was
the
also
series of
scored.
a dance dialogue. Yeah. Oh, I wondered if that was God because of the way that you wrote up how that worked and the context that you were in, and the fact that you mentioned shared practice or sharing your practices. And shared
Uh-huh.
practice is something I'm really that's one of my obsessions, is shared practice and what that could mean, what that might mean frame. So I feel like scores for me are a interlocutor in a way. They're a connector to those possibilities.
Yeah.
But also I think the way you work with score is really interesting. So
Yeah, I feel like the scores are maybe evolving over time. I think when I started working with scores, like there's the scores I do inside of dances to get the dance out, to
yeah,
like make it show up.
yeah,
And then there's like formal scores that are just series of instructions, or that I like create physical objects for in galleries. Or so I think like scores function in a lot of ways. Sometimes they're just to like make material show up or to make something happen. Sometimes it's about compositional sort of organization, or how do we organize like time? How do we organize ourselves in space? Sometimes they're just a prompt and then I abandon it altogether. And sometimes they're sort of material objects for an audience to do, not for me to do at all. Like here, walk into this room and now what, right? Sometimes they're responses to prompts from galleries or other, well, it's always galleries, to be in response to another work or an exhibition. So I think they
Mm,
have like many lives depending on like sort of what the ask is or what the gig is or what shows
mm,
up for me. I think like to speak with Simran, I mean, that was sort of like a getting to know you. I knew Simran before, of course, but I knew her
yeah.
as a dancer in someone else's work, and I wasn't as familiar with her as a creator. And I'm not a whacker, so it was really important that we found an entry point to the movement that she does, which of course is like steeped in this rich history, which is not separate from my own, right? Like it's just
Hmm.
a different, it's things happening somewhere else, you know? So I felt like it was really important that I wasn't choreographing or I wasn't dissecting, like disintegrating whacking. I was like, you know what it is and you know what it's meant to do. So how do we figure? So my sort of first prompt to Simran was like, what else can whacking do?
Mm,
Where does it, like, we know where it lives and we know its function in its communities or in community. We see how it's being commercialized or used in other spaces. But if we think of it as an expansive tool of relation, what else can it do? And how can we allow whacking to be like all of it? Like let it be itself in a different context, and then we can see what it does. But it was just also about our ability as dancers to change scale within our bodies, within and have our bodies perceived as if it's changing scale, and then also our reach in space can be very close to ourselves, or it can move out to the, you know, the universe.
yeah. Oh, I like that a lot. And you were going to say in Brutal Joy, was there something similar in
Well,
Brutal Joy
yeah,
you were
Brutal
going to
Joy is
say?
also a slow, like it
Yeah.
unfurls very slowly, although it's like hyperactive. Like that's the wild thing is like what I'm doing at the very beginning, like my body is moving incredibly slowly, but James is a wizard and is doing things with the lights that allow us to feel as though there's a ton of activity, but
Yeah.
it's not really, I mean, what I'm doing is takes a lot of effort, but it is not unfurling in a quick way. So I think we built our score collectively, and while we're all working on the same thing, it's necessarily in very different ways because of course James and Mel are not black people and they don't come from
Yeah.
black community, but it was about how their archive could meet mine. And also of
Mm,
course James and I have been friends for so long and have been making work together for over 15 years that we have an
yeah.
archive of work.
Yeah.
So it was something about them bearing witness to something as a way to valorize my position and invite an audience in, you know,
Mm,
to do the same. And, you know, this work in
mm,
particular, what became really important was that it wasn't just about what I was doing.
yeah.
It was about how we all meet in it. So there are times, I mean, there's a time where I literally sit down. I don't do anything. I go off stage and I sit down, or I go to the side of the stage. And then it
Yeah.
becomes, so it's a real trio in that way. And for me, that was a big departure, was not to always center the dancing, but to allow the other material to speak. And it speaks so beautifully and so loudly. And it's about me sitting back, which I think is something that is embedded in the electric slide, which is embedded in those line dances, is like you got to know when to cede power elsewhere, you
Ah,
know, because there
mm,
is power elsewhere. So I think that's part of the scoring. I actually don't know what our score is looking like now, but we did have something very definitive, but it just keeps shifting
mm,
and is very palimpsestic, right? Everything just gets written on top of the thing before. So I'm sure there's things we're still doing before, but they're just so embedded and buried now that they're just part of it, that it's like
yeah.
breathing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. I felt with the piece I saw with Simran, and it sounds like I haven't been able to see the Brutal Joy yet, but I feel like you're allowing time with the movement ideas.
Uh,
And I had a moment where I felt like there was time for the past to catch up to
oh,
the
great.
moment, or that the audience, for the time for the audience to consider where the movements come from or what they represent for the doer. And then I was thinking about almost like what is the feeling for the doer?
Oh, yeah.
Like I felt that very strongly. And I think that's maybe something that is important to you
I
compositionally
mean,
as
the
well.
feeling is everything, right? I think I
Yeah.
always quote Catherine McKittrick when she says this thing that feeling is knowing is feeling. And
Mm,
I just think if we can, there's something. yeah, the feeling of doing, the feeling of being with, the feeling of it happening, the feeling of it having happened, like all of those things. And I like this idea that you said about like it's like it creates a like time for everyone to catch up to what's happened, you know, and I
Yeah.
think about where that is like what the origin within the body, within the psyche, within the spirit, like whatever, however you want to think about it, that like what allows it to arrive first.
Mm.
And I think for any given moment in any work, that could be different, you know, sometimes. I mean, I definitely, the Brutal Joy is like very, very, very hard dance to do. And, you know, when I'm in show 3 or 4, I become very spontaneously religious and I start praying, right? And I'm really get through
You're
it
going to
with
be able to get through it.
but also that like sometimes I call upon like the present moment and sometimes I'm calling upon my, you know, my grandmother and being like, sister, like she passed away 2 years ago, not last summer, but the summer before. And I feel myself like calling on her to be like, please move me through this. And then there's other days where I wake up in the morning and I have like a very like brainy intellectual idea about how I want to navigate a part of the score. So I arrive with that bit of myself. And I guess my hope is that in any of the ways that I arrive in the work, that I, no matter how I initiate my starting point that day or in that moment, that I very quickly move to feeling and not work to be smart or clever or I don't know. I try and do the smart and clever before to like whatever success or failure I have there, but I think there's
Yeah.
it's just so much like it just arrives when we start. So we can do all the thinking and all the preparation, but like the real thing, like the real goods, there is something about like it's happening right now and only right now.
And that's what I feel about tap. And it's given me a whole new access point to my body movement, what I value, the things I value. Like I'm in it. I'm in it. So yeah, I'm there. It allows me to be present. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I know what I'm gonna do, but then there's what happens. And if we
Yeah.
can stay tethered to what happens as opposed to what we hoped would
And
happen.
one of the things I've had to give myself, which is similar to the feeling thing and not trying to be smart with it or drill certain things, is I realized, because I'm improvising a lot of the time and I'm tap shoe dancing, I'm not tap dancing,
Yeah.
is which foot is free.
Uh-huh.
That's what I've given myself, not which foot am I on or what is that foot doing, but which foot is free. And
I
that
love
is just how I'm then now moving through my movement, body language, whatever that might mean, with that prompt for myself. So that's given me a lot of freedom.
that's such a great prompt for just like
For
dancing. Oh
sound, right?
my
For that sound that my movement might be making and the
God.
sound I might make, like, yeah, that's given me a lot to play with. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's gorgeous.
So much we could talk about. I could go on like this I could just talk with a cocktail for several cocktails. But galleries, I'd like to move to galleries. I know we haven't spoken about dance dialogues quite. We didn't quite get there. However, that is part of your associate artist
Yeah.
frame. It's inside there. And so we'll definitely come to that. But I wonder if maybe we could get there through your relationship with galleries seems quite intimate, quite wonderful, quite kind of multifaceted again, but there's an intellectual side and then there's response side that you mentioned. I'm really interested in that. And those kinds of dialogues and conversations you've managed to create and cultivate with visual artists, maybe that could lead us into dialogues in general, that you're involved in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the galleries, there's been a number of galleries and a number of curators, but I do feel like that sort of gave me permission to break dance rules or to break my own expectations of myself in the land of dance. Because, of course, when you spend most of your career as a dancer, a certain kind of dancer who works at a certain level of physicality, and then you make work that doesn't meet that. There's, yeah, maybe I was just like, ooh, maybe I don't fit in a dance presentation place and that was always fine for me. I guess, oh my God, this show was about the basketball players with that SDG. He said this amazing thing. He's like, I'm not here for the fame, I'm here for the glory. And I was like, damn. But I think there's something that like I just at a certain point I realized that when I was in those other spaces, I could explore other parts of my practice that I maybe had always been there, but I didn't know how to be with. And then all of a
Mm,
sudden there was this space that I didn't know the visual arts rules, and I didn't know all the people, and I didn't know who I was supposed to be cool with and who I was not supposed to be cool. Like it was very freeing space for me. So it
mm,
allowed me to try on some things that felt like if I was going to make something, this is actually how I would make it. And because those spaces are just, the history of performance in galleries, when we're talking about performance art or durational performance or like invisible performance or object performance, it just sort of opened things up for me and it made me feel like I didn't have to prove that I was dancing or not dancing. It was just like, this is what this artist is doing. So I think it was very liberatory in that way because I was aware that I was actually a very terrible choreographer in the way that I can't make up movement and I get confounded by patterns and like I'm not a spreadsheet gal. Like you can ask me to make something make sense and I want to flip a table. So I was really I was really like, oh, in here these large little fleeting musings I have about how we could be together can be realized, and no one's needing me to be a virtuosic dancer in those acts of heroism that are usually attached to dance. I don't have to kick here, I don't have to turn here, I don't have to be fantastic or otherworldly in those ways, but maybe I can
mm,
offer like other worlds for myself to live in. So I think there's some curators that have been like very, very important in my life, Vanessa Kwan being one of them. And
mm,
now the director at the Libby Leschgold is also the dramaturg for Brutal Joy. And we've been in this, I don't know, 13-year conversation. And, through the pandemic got quite close. There's just a way that Vanessa Kwan is able to hold art and artists and ideas that is just astounding, just open and astounding and critical and like full of joy, like something I hadn't experienced before.
mm,
I've been really lucky to work with these folks who just are so interested, like just so interested like in everything
mm,
but just so committed to like teasing out all that you are and
mm,
not needing you to cleave off bits of yourself to be there, but also
mm.
respecting the fact that you may want to cleave off bits. So I think there was something really,
Yeah.
there was talking about conformist and nonconformist, and that these conversations that I started to get into with these people just like propelled me in a thousand other directions. So I think that I've been lucky that I've worked with some extraordinary folks, and then watching other curators who are friends, like watching how they function in community in the world and with artists has also been really, really inspiring. There's just sort of an ethos that is all about allowing the work to arrive. And then through talking to them, I go, oh, I didn't know about that. And then I'm a
Mm,
nerd, right? As you know, my kids say, oh, you're just a
mm,
nerd in nice clothes, mom. I'm like, correct.
mm. Yes.
And then they've just sort of opened up other worlds, or did you know about this? Or I saw this, and made me think of you. And I think that these dialogues don't just happen to within the construct of being in the gallery and exhibiting work or showing work. They are always happening in the space between those things. And so I think for me, that was like where we go back to this idea that relationships are everything.
Mm. So are you an associate professor at SFU? Is that your title?
I'm assistant professor.
Assistant,
I don't
assistant.
have tenure yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're assistant professor. Yeah.
Yeah, I find it like very, it's wild. I think and before I came here, I wasn't teaching the same people all the time, right?
Mm,
I would sort of do like, teach professional class here and there, and like you sort of do this thing so that every time you go somewhere, you're kind of new and shiny and exciting for people. And of course, last year was the first group that I taught from first year through to fourth year. And yeah, you get bored of each other. You get sick of each other. They get tired of hearing you say the same things. You get tired of hearing them say the same things. But I think, again, because I am such a long game kind of person, like the long game is so hot, right? Like the long game is where it's at because to watch somebody
absolutely.
figure themselves out, which is what they're doing, like we don't
Mm,
figure them out for them. They wish we could, I think.
yeah.
I mean,
They
I did
expect
have
us to initially.
Oh, I mean, I
Yeah.
had someone say, like, you're not making me love dancing. And I was like, not my job.
Yeah.
Like, you got to
Absolutely.
come with that, sister.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you got to come with that. That's not, I can't, I can do a lot of things, but I can't make miracles happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I also said when I didn't love dancing, I quit. And I'm not telling
Yes.
you to quit. I'm just saying
No.
it does require, because it is a devotional thing, and it does require being able to buy into the devotion, you know, or to not even buy in, like you're just in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think I feel like you, I'm really focusing. It's like not on completing the action. It's about how you're moving through the action and what the action says to the next action and the next action and the next action. And that when you've done all the actions, you can look back and make meaning, right? But it's like
Mm-hmm.
not about making meaning as you're going. It's about like being in the act of doing, making choices. But of course, what I forget is that they're 20, or some of
Mm-hmm.
them 18 or 19 or 20, maybe 21, and that I do have expectations for them to work beyond their years. And that's like my biggest challenge is going like
Mm-hmm.
they're just little. Like I know they would hate me saying that because of course they're very mature and lovely and smart and worldly and not. But they are really young, and would I at 20 have been able to absorb the things I'm saying now? Absolutely not, right? So I think there's like a lot of learning about my expectations. Of course, we're teaching in different ways. The way I was raised in dance would, you know, everybody would be canceled 1,000 times over.
Mm-hmm.
So not that I want to teach that way, but I think that some of that sort of fear-based teaching and some of that like destroy yourself for the art approach to teaching created a great deal of resilience in me, right? Along with being who I am in the world.
I think there's also a potential, like you recognize it, that people see potential in you to be giving you that much either criticism or like
Yeah,
attention, right? And if you don't get that, then you have to sit in a different kind of anxiety. You're sitting in
absolutely.
a different kind of, which is almost like an invisibility,
Yep.
or an anonymity, which is not healthy either.
Nope.
And we definitely do not need that at the moment for
No one
younger
needs that, and
generations
no one
at
needs to
all.
be erased. I mean,
No,
no one needs to be erased in real time.
no, yeah,
And yeah, so
yeah,
I think there's just like a lot of learning. I mean, they know more about a certain amounts of things than I do, right? Like
hmm
being, I know nothing about being 20 in 2025. Absolutely
no,
nothing. Zero.
no,
Right. So I think it's like there's a lot of humble pie I have to eat sometimes. And then there's also things about like being demanding that I feel really, really good about because I think the point is I'm supposed to be able to see in them things they're not able to see in themselves. And I have to like support them to draw it out of themselves. Right. It's not mine to pull out of them. Like that's
no,
theirs to pull out of them. But I do like, I love teaching. I mean, I've always been a teacher. Like, I think I started
yeah,
teaching before I was even like, maybe I started teaching the same year I started formally taking dance classes. Like, I had no
hmm
idea. I just always, I think teaching is how I figure things out.
hmm
And then, you know, when I met with pushback or resistance, that makes me really think about my teaching and my
hmm
approach and my hangups. And I also love teenagers so much. Like I love them. I mean, I know they're 20, but they're teenagers and or they have that is that there's still that sort of development.
yeah,
They're that development place. And I think it's like very easy to write off teenagers because of the wild emotions and the wild hormones and but I think they're just inexperienced. They're just inexperienced, but that doesn't mean they don't know things. And some of my students make choreography that like blows my mind, you know?
hmm
And then I think, what is that body thinking? And like,
mm
what is that body feeling? And,
mm.
or they make decisions in a class that are just so courageous. Like, I don't know that I would have, I was really good at being obedient when I was 18 and 19 and
mm
20 in dance class and like
mm
moving towards what the teacher wanted. But I see my students bring forward things that like never fell out of my face and or
hmm
were the ask and are kind of are radical and then me the dancer not me the teacher gets like shook and excited and then I
yeah,
you know and I feel like that's the beauty of teaching, right? Teaching long term with the same
mm
people all the time is that you're in an exchange and I don't need to be the one who knows everything.
mm
I much prefer not to know everything so I can know more stuff, right? And when
yeah,
when some young body does this wild, inspired thing that maybe they're not even able to articulate what happened, but we all know what just happened. I find that
hmm
to be like that's the embarrassment of riches that comes from teaching, right? Because you're just like, wow,
Yeah,
I
that's
just got to be
yeah.
around that, and I want to be that, and I
Mm.
want to be 20 and be in their dance or like whatever
Yeah,
it
I know
is.
you have these moments. Yeah, I
Mhm.
want this set of people to really like me, and then I feel like these people understand me in this way, and then I have a very different relationship to the first years than I do to the third years.
Of
We have
course.
3 years, and it's amazing, and they want different things from the program, and
Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love it. I think it's so exciting to me, and I see them inventing themselves, and I'm
Oh,
part of that journey. I mean,
yeah.
it's incredible. It's
But then you're
incredible.
also like, you're not even who you're gonna be yet.
No,
But like,
they don't. I mean, they
how
don't
many
have a.
different versions of you, like, do I get to watch, hopefully, for the next, like, and I also find another thing that I find very wonderful about being at the university is working with graduate students, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
also very, very exciting. And
yeah. It's a
yeah, like
different
people who are a
plane.
little bit further along,
Yeah,
or they're narrowed in a particular way. And even if it's myopic in some ways, sometimes watching them through that journey, and of course, because I just did it not that long ago, I'm like, oh yeah,
yeah,
that's a wild ride. But I don't know, I find the graduate students also very, very inspiring. And then here's the thing, also the faculty here at the SCA gives, I say here because I'm in my office, but
yeah.
yeah, it's all pretty life-giving in those ways, right? Where I'm just like,
Hmm.
what? You did what? Yeah.
So, just to bring us to a bit of a close, then,
Hmm.
and just for the last bit, let's bring it back to the associate artist. We've covered everything we've been discussing is part of your associate artist, as I understand it, like as your, because again, it's another relationship that you are in with the dance center where the support is what you need when,
Yep.
for these different projects. So
Yep.
could you talk a little bit about like where that's going, and then what you hope that would lead to, or maybe what's next, or where that whole thing is leading to, and we'll bring it to a kind of close
Yeah.
around that.
I mean, I think it's really important to say that Raquel and Myrna have like been putting up with me for 15 years. And every time they invite me to do something, I think I offer back something totally unruly, and they say yes. So that trust has allowed me to like really think responsibly about being unruly. There's such a thing.
Nice.
So I think part of what I'm doing in the associate artist position in these few years is, of course, I'm presenting the Brutal Joy. I did the dance
Hmm.
dialogue with Ryan Takata, who's a colleague of mine here, who's an incredible performance maker, an incredible thinker, a joyous human, and someone I love deeply.
Hmm.
But I'm thinking about writing. I've been writing more and more in the last few years.
Mm.
I think some of it for me is also about bringing other folks into the dance center, helping with or like providing or options for programming that maybe are things that would come to me before they would come to the dance center.
Yeah.
An artist who say like, "Oh, hey, I would love to do this. Do you know if there's somewhere I can do it?" I'm like, "I'm interested in that. What if I host you here in this way?"
And do you mean interdisciplinary artists? I know it's like scholars, academics, and visual artists, or like any art kind of
Any
any kind of art. Yeah,
dance,
anybody.
anybody, or I think art historians,
Yeah.
there's something about this sort of kinship, that happens just through conversation or hanging out or knowing someone through someone else and then realizing like, oh, okay, we align in this way. And like, what would it mean for you to be in this other space to talk about it or to be with it? I think also just through my collaborations and my work itself, it brings other people into the dance center who aren't always there, and then in a conversation with sort of dance practices or even production practices that are outside of their knowing. So we get to sort of expand other people's understanding of what production practices look like when we're trying to make a show or when we're trying to do a showing. I think one other thing is we're going to do an Older and Reckless with Moonhorse Dance Theater, which is run by Allison Cummings now. And Allison and I were like, full Gen X grunge girls in the 90s in Toronto together.
Excellent. Hmm.
She took it over from Claudia Moore, so we're
Mm.
curating and I've loved, Allison made this work quiver a million years ago. I don't even know how old we were. We were much younger than we are now, which haunts me still to this day. And so I told her, and she was like, oh, well, why don't I make work on you for Older and Reckless? Which for me, it's such a delight
Excellent.
to be the dancer because it doesn't happen that often anymore. So I think there's
Yeah.
like programming, which is about like calling in community intergenerationally and sort of like what am I trying to say? Just like interdisciplinary within dance itself, interdisciplinary outside of dance.
Yeah.
I mean, I've used my residency time there. Also, I'm doing a project with Dylan Robinson. It's his project that we're doing a music thing about gesture in Montreal, and we rehearsed there with some musicians to think about gesture and what gesture does. Dylan Robinson is an Indigenous scholar, a music scholar. He's an extraordinary human.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of like, yeah, I've been in Vancouver for 20 years. This year, this 2026 will be 20 years. And maybe this particular dance associate tenure this time is sort of that culling of all of like what's happened to me here in this time in Vancouver. Because of course, when I arrived in Vancouver, I had quit dancing. I was no longer an
Yeah.
artist when I got here.
Right.
So I think
Right.
there's something about what the city and the dance center has been a huge part of that, right? But I think for me, it's about like how many more people can we like weave into the fabric of the dance center, so the dance center, so I can support the dance center in sort of its broader mission, which is, I think, not about being an exclusive dance space, but it's about being like, what, again, we go back to the question, what can dance do? What does the
Yeah.
dance do? What does dancing allow for
Yeah.
on several registers? So I'm thinking about that, like what are we writing? What are we thinking? What are we speaking? How are we training? I just feel like those are the questions that show up for me, especially because it's so easy to critique institutions when you're not running one. And I have very, very purposefully never become a company, never become an institution. I mean, of course, there's all sorts of ways you're institutionalized, but I think there is, in my critique of things, I've had to stop and go like, wait a second, how does that really happen? And like, how do we build it from the dance out, as opposed to from the structure of the institution in to the dancers? And my experience with the dance center, and it's my experience, was that we can grow and mold things, mold and remold things should we choose. And they've always been down, they're like,
Yeah.
down for it. They're up for it all the time.
Well, I think there's a balance, isn't there, between what they want to be, what they want to hold space for,
Yeah.
and this is all on one side of it, and what they can actually raise money for or find money for, or what kind of support can they get, and then there's how are they supporting their members. And I think one of the things that what happens, and I say this all the time, is that if the members or the people who are in the dance community work with the dance center, then we understand what the dance community is. If the same people work with the dance center all of the time, and nobody else brings a project forward, it's going to appear that the dance community is a lot smaller than it is.
Yes.
And so there's an element, and that dance can only do a small amount of things.
Yeah.
And so what you're offering here and what you're showing is, and demonstrating, is that it's up to the dance community and the dancers, and however transient that might be, to be able to support the dance center in its existence, to support that bigger mission of it being, dance is in the community. It is, it's part of our culture. It's part of, it's the fabric of our very being. It's so many, and not just for dancers. So I fully support that.
Yeah.
And it's, there are so many facets to what you're doing as part of your artist associate position. It's hard to pin down. It's hard to say, but just to say in this conversation, we've only just kind of been able to scrape the surface and give examples of the kinds of projects that you're doing, but the kinds of projects that dancers do on an everyday basis in order to stay with and be with dance all of the ways that we can. And dance has given us all of these different ways to do that. So it's kind of a lovely, kind of expansive way of addressing, how dance is in our lives and what it can give us, but we've got to do something with it, so.
Absolutely. And I mean, my colleagues, my group, the people that I've been with for, 15, 20 years in this community, like they are extraordinary humans, like, who are just so in the doing at all times. So it's not that like I'm some force, like I feel like I am propelled by, impelled by, compelled by the people that I've danced with, that I make with, that I bitch about, dance with, or like
Yeah.
all of it, right? And I feel
Yeah.
like I've been led by example by so many artists in this community, by their example. And, I, the gratitude and the gratitude I feel for like being able to experience somebody else doing something I haven't done yet or will never do, but also understanding the lessons inside of that, right? And like you're built from your community. And I think about that with my family, and I think about that in dance, and I think about that in the larger art community. It's like you are, as much of as I've built myself, they have built me also by like taking me in, by pushing me out, by asking for more, by asking for less, like all of these things, right? And like, so I think for me, and I think when I think about the dance center and what that space is and my close dance posse, what we are, like I'm beholden to them and they are beholden to me, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
beholden for, and I'm beholden of, and I'm beholden to. And I think that this is like the operating system that like allows for some sort of like expansive abundance in what is so often a place of real scarcity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I can say this easily from my seat of security in my office at the university, but like this is new, like this is new, and I'm aware that people do so much with so little.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say in what we
Yeah.
do. They do so much with so little. And and I think like the really good ones don't need to remark upon it being so little. And I feel like very, very like honored to be amongst those folks, like honored not in a like kumbaya, like super West Coast honor, but just like, damn, I get to sit at the table with you. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that for me is like the thing to keep remembering.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are no lone wolves. There are no, we only exist because of everybody else who allows it to happen with us and
Yeah.
for us and around us. And like I think about that all the time. Like, why am I able to do all these things? It's not just because of me and me. It's like me and with who and with like it's all and plus in addition additive. So I
Absolutely.
think the electric slide teaches us that, and I think style teaches us that, and I think community teaches us that. Should we choose to listen? Yeah, and it's and sometimes it's hard to have that much humility.
Oh, yeah.
So often, so hard.
So, so hard. God, I'm tired. She
Yeah.
says. God. Okay. All right. That's good. I think we've covered a lot of things. I'm calling this. Thank
Okay.
you, Justine.
Oh my God, thank you, Claire. Delight as always. Beyond
Oh, I
delight.
know. Wonderful. Wonderful. More to come.
I hope so.
Bye for now.
Thank you so much for listening. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, as this will help other listeners find us and help us to grow our dance audience. We'll be back next month. In the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook at The Dance Centre, Twitter at Dance Centre, and Instagram at The Dance Centre BC. And if you'd like to support our work, please consider making a donation. Just go to our website at thedancecentre.ca, where you'll find extensive information about our upcoming programs and events. The music for the Dance Centre podcast was composed by James B. Maxwell. Always a pleasure to connect with you through dance. Until next time.